It's my honor to be able to moderate this panel with some amazing people who are doing really great work. Reva Feldman, I'm a former city manager for the city of Malibu. I'm now the strategic advisor for After the Fire. And I have been through quite a few disasters and fires, and I have been doing it so long before there were things like apps and technology that helped us do it better. So I'm very excited to be able to hear all the cutting edge things that our panel is going to share with you today. So I'd like to start by having each of them introduce themselves. Io Wright, please.
Hi, my name's Io Wright, total loss survivor from Eaton and co-founder and chief program officer at Postfire, which I will tell you all about.
I'm John Mills. I'm the CEO and co-founder of WatchDuty.
Hey, y'all. I'm Adrienne Hines. I'm a clinical psychologist and a trauma and resilience researcher at the VA National Center for PTSD and Stanford University, and a co founder of a nonprofit, the After Collective, that uses tech to support recovery.
So, by a show of hands, how many of you have the app Watch Duty on your phone? Okay. How many of you have the paid subscription to Watch Duty? Okay. If you don't, after today, you will. And coming from local government, one of the things that we really struggled with was getting information, both from our first responders on what was going on in a disaster and then getting that information out to our community. And I was thrilled when Watch Duty came out because it really solved a big problem that we had struggled with. For those of you who've been around in the working world as long as I have, you know that what happens is that something happens, a disaster, whether it's police or fire who respond, and we have to wait for them to have eyes on what is going on and then share that information back to the local government, who then have to put together some sort of alert, whether it's going out on a website or a phone call, a reverse 911 system. And all of these things take time. Sometimes it's a bit of a game of telephone tag, so it's not always accurate information. And then you're relying on people getting that information. A lot of times they're subscription based, unless you're using reverse 911. And so people do not all get the right information at the right time. And so John figured out how to do that for us. And it has been a game changer. And we really saw that in January in both the Palisades and the Eaton fire. And that was how people were getting their information. And so I'm going to start with John. And I'd love you to tell the story of kind of how Watch Duty came about and your journey with it, please.
Thanks, Reva. Like many of you in this room and on this panel, as we became subject matter experts on accident, fire has affected our lives, and many of you heeded the call to action, and my experience was no different. First fire I went through, I bought a ranch off the grid, not far from here, and I was there about a month, and a couple of helicopters showed up over my house with buckets on the bottom, and that's when I realized this was not a drill. Um, Very quickly, they extinguished the fire, but there was no alert, there was no noise, there were no sirens, there was nothing. There was nothing in the news, nothing on the internet, and it just didn't. It's almost like it didn't happen. I asked my neighbors, and they were like, "Oh, it's just Tuesday. What do you mean? This is summer." And so, a lot of us got alerted by a bunch of S2s over the house or a Huey helicopter, and that's how you know there was a fire, and that's just not acceptable to me. And the wheels of government are challenging. We have to go through all these processes, but Watch Duty was able to break the rules, right? Because we don't have to go through the ICS structure and do what the emergency managers have to do to get the job done. And so I, don't blame the government for not being able to do it. Although I wish we could update, because frankly, I don't need to be in business. I mean, I'm a nonprofit and I do this out of passion, ultimately. But I've experienced a couple fires since. The Wallbridge fire was the next big one I went through, and really it was that experience of evacuating about 8 days, and my house didn't burn. But frankly, after 8 days, I just wanted it to be over. I didn't care if it burned or not. I was just tired of being stressed out for a week, and so during those events, I was listening to first responder radio traffic, and then I found people like me on the internet, on Facebook and Twitter, who were ex and active retired firefighters, dispatchers, and others who had taken to the internet because they had the same problem. They had the same problem in the Valley Fire. They had the same problem in Greenville and Lahaina, Paradise. All these people had experienced what I experienced, and so I really wasn't. It wasn't an innovator. I was just the architect, right? I found all these people and I found all this potential energy, and so putting them together is where it became kinetic, and that's when Watch Judy was born.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate the work you're doing. Um, so this panel is about tech and how we can center that with people. So Adrian, if you want to just share a little bit about the work you're doing, because that is about helping people, and how can we do that with technology?
Happy to. Thank you for organizing. So, similar to how what John was saying, I'm here because of lived experience, having seen wildfire devastate my community many times over. And to me, I kind of had this moment. My mom, I'm from the South, so they call it a come to Jesus moment. But it was how do we take more from these tragedies than they have taken from us? And one small way that I felt I could contribute was through technology to democratize access to support, to reduce suffering, and empower survivors to get back home. And there are many ways to do this. And I think what's really interesting is it's kind of like a three-legged stool with different ways to approach the same problem. And we have to do that collaboratively because the problem's too big. But what I am excited for this conversation is thinking about how can we reimagine recovery? It's always going to be people first. Communities are medicine, and our relationships are what's going to help us endure. However, we can optimize with these tech solutions as part of our armamentarium. So we have a toolkit that we've never before possessed. And imagine how that could help us potentially get this right. And if not right, at least a little better.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn it to Io, who has joined the worst club of the best people more recently, but glad to have you with us. Tell us all about Postfire and what you're doing, please.
I hate that I love it here so much. Well, I'm gonna run you through a deck because it's easier for me with visuals, so it'll probably be easier for you with visuals. Um, that's not true, but uh, we lost, as I mentioned, our home in the Eaton fire, and my partner Patty went through Katrina. We both went through Hurricane Sandy. We're very capable people. Like some like latent marine mode kicks in when disaster happens, and we still were completely overwhelmed and just staggered by how chaotic disaster recovery was. We assumed Jen mentioned this a couple days ago. Like we assumed that something would emerge to guide people through disaster recovery. There's nothing. You're just like thrust into the darkness, and then you get sent 85,000 spreadsheets and a bunch of links, and everybody's really well meaning. But what it turns into is shutdown. And then all the scammers and all of the people, predatory people start to emerge who are trying to take advantage of you. And we know how to navigate that. We also have friends we can call and say, hey, what does your lawyer say that we should do? Or what does your business manager say that you should do? And we were watching in real time how that was leaving a lot of people behind. So I used to work in journalism and I really believe in a fact check. And so we started fact checking things and then we started researching and we discovered that research shows that good, trustworthy guidance is one of the lead drivers of a successful recovery, often more so than cash aid across all populations. It's just as simple as teach a man to fish. And we were like, okay, we're on to something here. And the need for centralization was really obvious and apparent that there were so many survivors between the Eden and Palisades fires who would get better things if they banded together. So we started noodling on this idea. We also discovered this staggering statistic that only a third of survivors even apply for all the aid that's available to them because they don't know that it exists. So if you care as we do about closing the class and race gap in disaster recovery as it has historically always been, then that becomes an obvious hurdle. You're like, how do I at least make those people aware of all of that aid and give people the tools to DIY their recovery themselves? The other thing is recovery is absolutely exhausting. It's a full-time job. And so we know immediately who that leaves behind if you don't have time to do another full-time job on top of having kids or having a job or whatever. So single parents, anybody who already works, forget it, you get left behind. So we decided to do something about it. We started fact checking and researching, and then I got on Instagram where I had, somewhat of a following before, and it went bananas. I went viral every day for a month, which was really exhausting to try to navigate in a city like Los Angeles, let me tell you. But then what it turned into was this overwhelming avalanche of feedback saying, please, we want more, we want more, we want more. Because what we were delivering was fact checked, verified information in a calm way, in a short form that people could actually understand in a trauma state. So we decided to build a portal around that premise. So we've built a custom solution that is completely built around the person that's using it. So when you log into Postfire, it'll greet you by name and it knows your circumstances. So if you're an insured homeowner who's rebuilding, it's only going to give you information for an insured homeowner who's rebuilding. You're not going to have to pick through all of information about renters, et cetera. And it guides you through recovery one step at a time from the day of the fire until the day you're sitting back on your new couch. And every single step in the portal is designed with expert guidance. So whoever the best person is in the field, we will go out and call them. Many of you in this room have gotten shitty emails from me, pardon my French, asking you to fact check long guides. The people in this room have made that possible after the fire has made that possible, but we only go to the best so that the information survivors get is the best. It uses trauma-informed, neurodivergence-informed design to take you through literally one step at a time. But also, if you want to see it in a list form and rip through, you can. But it's designed around what the survivor brain, what our experience is when you're in a trauma state. If there's a guide that you need on something, it'll do that. If it can perform a task for you, it will do that. We're always trying to lighten the lift for survivors. And then one of the most important things it does is that if there's a service provider that can help you with whatever step you're on in your recovery, it presents it to you so that you don't have to go out and search for those things, trying to close that gap on those 2/3 of people who don't apply for all that aid that's available to them. We also try to plug people straight into service providers if they're open to information sharing so that they don't have to fill the same form out hundreds and hundreds of times, which we've all experienced. We built a custom rebuild calculator that is specific to disaster and wildfire recovery that covers all of your different insurance coverages. This is not what it looks like. It's way cooler than this. It goes over what like for like is, and it does as much of the lift for survivors so that they don't have to figure it out. And then it shows them the various different options of discounted or free architectural offerings and points them to the things that are available to them and helps them understand what's possible. It's 100% free at all times. If you don't want to join, you can access all of the information and the guidance outside publicly. Or if you want to join, then you get that custom bespoke experience designed just for you, and you'll have access to free and discounted things. On the back end, we've all heard people say lead into data. We have currently the largest aggregation of verified survivors in Los Angeles outside of Red Cross and FEMA, et cetera. So what that allows us to do is give actual up-to-date information on where people are and what people need because they're telling us. We don't believe in speaking for survivors, so we like to just drive with data. So that's as much as I'll take up on this stage.
Thank you. That was really, really interesting.
Oh, it launches in October.
I love that too. What I love is how something really bad happened in January, and these good things are coming out of it. But one of the questions, and I kind of want to go to Adrian, is how do what and I want you to talk more about the work you're doing and why that's important and how we can use it without losing that soft touch of humans, right? I mean, we all are dependent on our phones and our computers, and I use AI now all the time. But there's still something, particularly when you're going through a disaster and recovery, that you need that soft touch of a person. So, can you kind of talk about the work you're doing and then how you're mitigating that risk?
Absolutely. So I can give a little bit of context on how I got up here on this stage. So my background has been at the intersection of psychological science and technology, and working in public health to create digital mental health safety nets for the most vulnerable. So I'm not here on behalf of the VA, but a large part of my work there has been developing a portfolio of apps that are free, that are science based, and don't take your information and sell it. And we also have this lens for being trauma informed, which I'm so thoughtful of how Io has been, developing his product, because it's not just saying you went through a horrible thing, how hard that must be. It's so much deeper. It's not pathologizing. It's validating and saying you're having a human response to a terrible thing. And there's also a cognitive neuroscience piece to it where when we undergo these traumas, our prefrontal cortex gets hijacked and these executive functions like, I know, thinking and planning, decision making, stepping on the brakes instead of hitting the gas. That's all really hard when you're in trauma, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. And so, how do we come up with these tools and solutions that meet people in their fire brain, which is a word that we've proliferated and I think is, is quite validating. I still might have it. Uh, and then where it comes to meeting the moment now is we have to think about what's not working and be a little disruptive, maybe go and get in a few fights, be a little unpopular or provocative. And I'm seeing some really amazing ideas emerge through emergent leadership and innovation that include, public-private partnerships, developing outside of government, developing outside of academia, and thinking about where can we harness this innovation to support a vulnerable community. So we always want to be careful not to extract. This is a community that's coming in crisis, and so how do we protect these users? That's the word for tech users, and make sure that we are co-designing with them at each step of the way. How do we center their voices, their needs, and their preferences? Because I can assure you, I've built a lot of products, and most have been, I would say, very, very reception. Some more successful than others. Is if it's for someone and not with them, you're going to have pretty low uptake, and if you do get someone to download it, very poor sustained engagement. So we are at the After Collective, this newly founded nonprofit, are harnessing the power of AI to support disaster recovery. And what that means is that in one place, someone can enjoy some mental health support, psychological first aid, or skills for psychological recovery, which are evidence informed protocols for disaster. Folks working on the front lines can benefit from stress first aid. But then it's also woven in a very gentle, light touch way. We call it Trojan horse mental health support because people come for the practical, but need the support to keep enduring the journey. A marathon of sprints, as they say. And so this platform is going to be agnostic to any one app. It will be available on Slack, Discord, WhatsApp, and meet people where they are on their phones and give them these small snack size pieces of information and resources that's personalized. And we're really trying to do this ethically, responsibly, as everyone is, and excited to hear more about the directions y'all are taking to meet people in their moments of trauma and get information across in a way that feels like you can metabolize it and do something with it.
Thank you. John, I was hoping what you could kind of go deeper into Watch Duty. I know we are all familiar with it, so we see it from a user perspective, but there's so much behind the scenes that makes it as efficient and reliable as it is. And so I would just really love for you to explain the cameras and all the ways you have it connected in, and probably things I don't even know about. That's all technology based.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how to start. There's a lot going on. Let me start with a question. How many people in the room think this is AI driven? Wow, we got one, two. Usually I get in a room and people think this is built out of Silicon Valley, not built out of the wildlands where it came from. It is run by human beings who listen to radios 24 hours a day, day and night. We have night shifts. We have a guy in New Zealand who's one of the most famous radio operators in the world. Never even been to California in his life. And so we have an interesting group of people who are of service 24 hours a day. Just last week, the TCU Lightning Complex lit the Sierra foothills on fire, and China Camp burned, unfortunately, and the radio infrastructure was failing. And so my team of operators got in a truck and drove radio equipment at midnight, 3 hours to right outside of China Camp to install infrastructure to stand up radios so that the first responders and emergency managers who are remote can hear them. We get phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning when a town is burning down and the GIS department is ill prepared for what is happening to them, and we will fix their infrastructure and their maps for them whenever they ask at no cost. because it's the right thing to do. Thank you. We as a group need to all get better at working together. And frankly, I'm also standing here being a hypocrite because when I first started, I was extraordinarily angry at the government for not helping me or working with me. And we, after several years, have turned the tables with a lot of these organizations. We still struggle daily, or I should say weekly, but when their town is in trouble and we help them and ask them nothing in return, they finally start to realize what we are actually there for. And so it's really important to lean into that. But it takes time. And the status quo will not change without a fight, unfortunately. Resistance is not enough. That is inaction to me. Unfortunately, when something is threatened, it lashes back at you. And we are unfortunately the beneficiaries of that many times. And many of you have similar stories in this room of meeting great opposition. But back to the app itself, the software really isn't the hard part, but that's what you see. The app is really a very simple operation. I'm not the first person to invent an app with a map in it, right? It's not very interesting when you actually think about it. It's an obvious problem with a non-obvious solution. And that's where really the innovations came out of. So I guess Riva wanted me to talk about some of the features in the app, but maybe I should talk about where we're going. If any of you ever tracked a wildfire, and before Watch Duty, you would have, the windy.com up looking at the wind. You would have the alert wildfire cameras up. You'd have CAL FIRE's website up, and you'd have 15 browser tabs open. And so our first goal was to collapse all that data into one place, right? Not very hard to solve, frankly. Engineering is easy. People are hard. And so we were able to luckily complete that mission last year. And now we are building something much bigger. We didn't put fire in the name on purpose. And so next year we'll be launching our flooding program. People are dying in floods at a higher rate than fires. People aren't afraid of water like they are of fire, even though water kills more people. And we just watched that in Kerrville, where those poor little girls got swept away in that flood. And the same problem happened. There were, a community of emergency managers who were ill prepared. We heard them on the radio talking 90 minutes before the flood happened, and they could not find the approval to press the button to start alerting people. This happened in Lahaina as well. And this is a repeating story that we keep hearing. And so I look at this as a natural disaster problem, not a fire problem, not a climate change problem. These are problems that have always been there, and they always will be there. And they'll be there no matter if it's Trump or Biden. This is not a federal issue. I wish that it was, but unfortunately it's not. And so that's where we step in to build infrastructure and resiliency to meet the moment when people need us the most.
Thank you. Just sort of a follow up on that. So I know you said you have people who are 24 hours a day listening to radios. Are there other tools that you're using to get information and then you verify it with your 24-hour team? How does that work?
Well, we monitor, we have automated ways to monitor all the signals for vegetation fire. There's AI cameras and detections. There's, CHP and NIFC Wildcat and a bunch of others. Some of that might not make sense to people in this room, but there's signals that are coming in all the time. And that will ping our team in certain regions, and then they'll be able to turn the radio on, either locally or remotely over the internet. And then they will start collaborating in real time. So really what we're doing is we're content editing on the fly, right? We're not too different than Wikipedia when you really think about it. It's a bunch of people who care about, public knowledge and information, and we just happen to do it at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's needed most. And so everything is verified because it's all typed by humans. It's not done by AI, right? So there are people there with checks and balances who are making sure that we are publishing verifiable truths. Whether or not it was 70 acres or 71 acres, that's what the incident commander said at the time. That's what they went on. That is the truth at that moment. It will get updated and will get changed, and we will, re-verify and update. But it's important that we record everything and we speak the truth. And so many times we get called in under tribunals and councils and in front of, state officials who will be upset at us, and then we will give them an after action report that is more detailed than anything that they've ever seen, because we hear and see everything, right? And we back up everything we do with facts. We're not an editorialization or sensationalized organization, right? We only tell you what we're hearing, not what we think we are hearing.
Thank you. You touched really briefly on partnerships and having lived in the government lane. That's something that I have always said is so important, that those relationships and partnerships that you have on blue sky days are the ones that are going to come through for you when things are going wrong. And so I'd love, Io, for you to talk about some of the partnerships and relationships that you have been able to establish and that have helped you with what you're developing and getting things correct and all of that. So if you want to talk about that for a minute.
Partnerships are everything. I mean, Sam was up here from Amazon talking about how everybody needs to own their lane and everybody has their thing that they're really good at. I think after the fires, like many of my Altadena fellow Altadenans are here who have been there a lot longer than I have. There's a communal spirit that kicks in certain communities and sadly not in others, but communities that are used to having a band together did fairly well after the Eaton fire because we know how to look after each other. And there's partnerships that have to form between people who are on the ground. There's partnerships that have to form between people who are organizing, and then there's partnerships that have to form with people who have like kind of the top down system. For post fire, we're like the air traffic control. So we use journalistic standards to decide, if something is peer reviewed, we'll put it out. If something is somebody's opinion, we're not going to put it out. And so we have to sometimes make calls where people call us all the time asking us, well, now you guys seem to know everything. And we've set ourselves as this hub and kind of clearinghouse of like, but we're not making up the standards by which we decide whether something is true or not. And that makes partnerships sometimes a little tricky because people don't have those standards. Like John was talking about facts in this day and age are a nebulous concept. So we have to really align ourselves with people that believe in a certain type of stringent fact delivery. You guys, after the fire, has been like one of the most incredible resources in terms of connecting us. Like you guys showed up right after the fires, and Jen hounded me. She sent in messages through the website. She wasn't taking no for an answer. She was like, "To hell with your trauma brain. I'm coming after you until you listen to me. I have a menu of people who can help you." And it's really true. She brought a menu of people, and once a month she came, and there was somebody new. We met Val Brown, who is the human Swiss Army knife of all things disaster. Like, let's hear it for Val Brown. I can call Val Brown or text Val Brown about anything to do with disaster and be like, will you please make sure that this is true? Because at the end of the day, the thing that we're trying to do is not waste the survivor's time with misinformation or sending them down the wrong track because they have no energy, they have no time. What we're trying to do is lighten the lift. So whenever there's a partner, there's people in this room who have ties to the community that are generations long. I'm not that person in Altadena. I can't go and I can't fake that. And authenticity, authentic connection with people who are in a trauma state who do not want to ask for help. That's like survivors when you say, "Oh, just tell me what you need." Like that's a failed model automatically because people who are in that state are like, I'm fine, I don't need anything." Because we didn't choose this, we don't know what's going on. But when you have people who've been there for a long time who have trust, if they trust us and they see that our information is valid, we have to partner with the people who have their lane that they own. So I look around, I see 24 people in this room who I've emailed and asked for facts around mortgages, facts around insurance, facts around rebuilding. Sierra over there, our very first grant that we ever got, which is the deepest honor of like our operation, was from another nonprofit. She was like, "Nobody's giving you guys a grant. I'm gonna do it," and they re-granted us 5 grand, and that meant the absolute world. Oh, extreme weather survivors. Yeah, extreme weather survivors had our back. So when you're a little org and you're like, no, I see something, I have a vision, I know there's a hole, there's a gap here, we know how to fill it. My partner Patty comes from tech, I come from writing, I can translate things. But what we do at Postfire really well is we translate all the incredible work that you guys do. You make these dense PDFs that are incredible but exceptionally hard to read. And so we translate them for a survivor brain. She knows how to do tech. She made the whole platform happen, and I can make it sound vaguely accessible. All of it is partnerships, every single piece of it. Amara sitting over there is from the Community Clergy Coalition. I get scared to swear around her every time I sit with her. But like we formed these incredible, unlikely friendships, and all those partnerships are necessary. Every single one on every one of those like different levels of org is incredibly necessary to this work. And Jen's always talking about less elbows, more hands, because there's also too much, there's enough disaster to go around. We forget that. But now 8 months out, I'm like, we're starting to land the plane, everyone's finding their lane.
Well, what I love about that is that is about the people, like what you've just said, what John has said, and what I know Adrian believes is technology is a tool, but the people are what we are serving and what we have to keep coming back to. People are how we verify facts, how we get good information. And as long as we're listening to that, and that's kind of the core and the center of what we're doing, regardless of the tools we're using. And I've been in disaster response when the technology doesn't work. I've been in fires when, my fiber optic line running into the city was burned and we had nothing, zero. And so you have to always think, yes, tech is a tool and it is great and it works really well. But if it doesn't work, what are we doing? And so it takes us back full circle to the people. And, John is living proof that he's using people to get us information in an incredibly timely manner. And he's using the tool of the technology to communicate it. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to actually sit and talk to Adrienne. She's one of the wisest women I've ever met in terms of what she understands about humans. And so, what I'd like you to talk about for a minute or a few minutes is about the inequities that we have in recovery and how there are some of us who have had a therapist or a network of help. Um, and we were going to go back to that when there is a disaster to get that help. And those of us who don't have that standing network and support system. And so, how are you looking at that to get ahead of that and the tech that you're using to do that? That was a long question. Sorry.
Well, thank you for those kind words. Yeah, I think where we have a lot of possibility is how do we use technology to be less alone? The paradox is real, right? Like I'm on my phone, but I want connection. But I do think there are ways to engineer it that harness our ability to care for each other. We know that peer support, I mean, just being here, honestly, at the summit is so therapeutic for me. I've been saying over and over, hearing about other people's lived experiences and their, ways of making meaning of, taking more from the tragedy they endured than it took from them. And we know that recovery is not equitable. And there are ways that we can combat that. And technology can be an equalizer. Most people do have a smartphone. And have access to the internet. And now with these tools, there's no silver bullet here, but people can't walk this alone. It's too hard. And when they try, it doesn't work. And you see a legacy of PTSD, domestic violence, divorce, suicide, depression, anxiety, and displacement. And we can do better. And these tools are part of that ecosystem of recognizing, yes, technology is a barrier, but also a facilitator of connection if we do it right. And we really don't want to cause harm. That's the biggest thing. So having to really think about what are those safeguards and guardrails that we build into our products that honor the lived experience of a survivor, but don't feed them a bunch of misinformation and connect them with people who elevate their journey, that keep it moving in the right direction. There's a lot of toxicity in our social media environment. How do we minimize that piece and amplify the healing components that we know we're capable of? And the digital mental health apps that we've been working on, we're at an inflection point with our technology. So I don't know, maybe AI will kill us, but I'm betting on it. There's some really incredible use cases for it.
Thank you. This is kind of going to be a question for each of you. If you could say, this is how I would love technology to help us with recovery, um, what would that wish be for each of you? Like, what tool, what do you see in the future? Kind of like projecting out. What's missing? What can we look forward to? John, want to take a stab at that?
Well, mine's going to be short because I'm in the business of the conflagration, not of the recovery, and I think these two human beings up here are doing exactly what needs to be done. Um, I sit in a different world and I watch as it happens, and I partake in it because I live in it. But um, there's always so much that one person or one organization can do. So I think these partnerships are important. But frankly, I mean, I think that post fire, has been something that should have been built a long time ago. Just like Watch Duty should have been built a long time ago, right? Just like Adrian's project. So I'm really hopeful for these two folks to hopefully hit some sort of scale. Um, Unfortunately, because it has to. Otherwise, we're going to keep doing the same thing we've been doing forever. And our town's going to keep burning, and we're going to keep looking through spreadsheets and have 7-year rebuild times or longer. Coffee Park is still not recovered. And so I'm hoping that this will speed up our connective tissue between us.
I would vehemently argue, Jen, that you are part of the recovery because what your product does is it offers safety and stability. Our sense of safety has been violated, and the way we understood ourselves, other people in the world, was turned upside down when these fires happen. So you are part of recovery. I hope you don't minimize that.
I appreciate that. It's not how I think about it much. After the fires are over, there's a decade worth of work, right? We'll still be doing what we're doing, but my job is easier in many regards than what you guys have to go through.
Unfortunately, recovery actually starts immediately. For those of us who work in government, particularly, like the second the firefighters start, we're thinking about recovery. So you are part of that, and what you do provide is actually information, critical information that people need to know as a disaster starts and during it. And that information really takes the anxiety down. A lot of times people just need to know. Maybe it's impacting them, maybe it's not. So it's just that information. So I really want to give you, the kudos that you deserve to give that. I mean, it brings me peace to know what's going on. And I'm not scrambling around on 12 different websites and windy.com, which I really do like, but you have windy.com right there in your app. And so I can see it. The other part, I have to do this plug. I really have to say this. When you get the paid part of Watch Duty, it shows you what helicopters are over the fire at a certain time, and you can watch and you can scroll over it, and it actually tells you the type of helicopter. So you got to get it. Anyhow, sorry, it's my favorite part of the app. If the same question for you, like, what's your wish and your vision of how technology can help what you are doing and make it better?
I want to do an experiment. If you've been evacuated because of a natural disaster threat, will you please stand up? And that includes having lost your home or had a home damaged. Yeah, right. Okay, me too. Okay. If you've had damage to your community from a disaster, will you please stand up? If you know someone who's had loss to their home from a disaster, will you please stand up? That's every single person in this room, y'all. So my hope for technology is that we understand that there's not survivors and then tech. There's all of us. You can sit down now. There's all of us and tech. And like the tech part is just the plate, but the people are the meal. We have all the things that you all have all the things that people need. And my hope for the tech is that, like, you saved my life and you saved all my neighbors' lives. So thank you. I'm not going to hear you minimize that. Don't talk about my Watch Duty like that. But people who see a problem, who go through something awful and see a problem or see something that's missing and then go out and invent it. Everybody in this room is an inventor. that is a type of innovation that is the most inspiring thing that I can imagine. Everybody here was like, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna do something about it. Like, not to be crass, but like that's hot. It is. So tech, I think, has the capacity to just keep evolving to meet the need that people in this room say that there exists. So my hope is that tech is responsive, but my real hope is that tech continues to centering the needs of what people say that they need. Like I want tech to continue to be responsive to giving people the things that they need. What Sam was saying about like when I hear people talk about going out and doing the research and listening, then I think, okay, maybe tech will be okay. But, tech also scares me. But I just hope that we can continue to be responsive. And I hope, frankly, that philanthropy starts to see the value in tech and starts supporting us in creating it. Because that's tough. People are like, that's cool. You made an app. What's that?
I love that. Thank you. So in our last few minutes, maybe each of you want to share kind of your words of wisdom, parting thoughts, funny jokes, Adrian.
They're not appropriate. Uh, my wisdom bomb, I wouldn't call it that, but my hope, if I'm going to put my futurist hat on, is that these tech products can reduce suffering, but also hand back survivors their agency and their time. Because we're all like in these meat suits and we don't have long. So let's, get back to living and setting those conditions for flourishing. And this is one way, one path of many that we can do that.
John, final thoughts?
I think I've said mine a little bit earlier, but I think it's important that people take matters into their own hands. This room knows that already, but I'll leave you with a mantra that we say at Watch Duty. It's don't ask for permission and do not seek forgiveness. Proceed until apprehended.
He literally stole mine. So now I'm on the spot. My desire is that people have more compassion for each other around the trauma that we're all carrying. And that inventiveness takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of chutzpah. And I hope that like people can hold more space for each other the ways that like we aren't always awesome when we show up immediately after a disaster when we've lost our house or whatever. But that inventive spirit, I hope that people keep leaning into that and figuring out ways to like go ask the person what they're doing before you judge them or dismiss them and try to extend a hand. Be like, can I help? How can I help you? That's been the most incredible thing about After the Fire. Y'all showed up and you said, how can we help you? And it changed all of our lives. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all.